Peter Boghossian taught philosophy at Portland State University for the past decade. He just wrote a public letter to the university's provost announcing he's quitting. You can read the whole thing on Substack, and you should. Here's a part of it. Quote, "This university has transformed a bastion of free inquiry into a social justice factory, whose only inputs were race, gender, and victimhood, and whose only outputs were grievance and division." Peter Boghossian is the author of How to Have Impossible Conversations. It's a great title of a book, almost as good as How I Saved the World, and he joins us here. All right, Professor, explain how this ex-professor, as of a couple hours ago, how did this all go down?
Well, the university basically created conditions that didn't allow me to teach what I was hired to do, which was critical thinking and ethics. And so I could not retain my current position as is.
So you're saying that you were doing what you've always done, teach critical thinking, assign reading materials of famous philosophers, and encouraging robust debate and conversation, and that was impossible because of what precisely?
Well, the university told me I wasn't allowed to render my opinion about protected classes or teach in any way that my opinion about protected classes could be known. The university really made it difficult in terms of students were telling me that other professors had told them not to take my class. There were flyers around me around campus with a Pinocchio nose. But this isn't really about necessarily the things that happened to me. That's just a piece of the larger picture of the social justice ecosystem that's taken over our university system.
Well, describe that ecosystem. Describe for people who didn't experience that in college. I did not experience that at all. I was actually a philosophy major for 2 years until I read Kant, and I couldn't stand the guy. I'm sure you agree. And switched to history. But what kind of things are professors like yourself experiencing where they're unable to do their jobs?
They're experiencing anyone who speaks out against the dominant moral orthodoxy, particularly with regard to race, gender, or sexual orientation, trans issues, for example. Let me just give you a quick example. In ethics, one of the issues that we're facing today as a society are trans issues. Trans bathrooms would be an example of that, or trans women in sports, trans men in sports, and what that means. And the trans is a protected class, and so I wasn't allowed to speak about protected classes, among other things. So there was a censoriousness about the university, and there was always the threat of investigation. I was investigated so many times for so many things, and the total results of the investigation were nada, zilch. They found nothing. But they weaponized offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even the threat of going to be called in for a theft of your time. And if nothing else, the investigators are incredibly thorough. So they have these mechanisms in place in the university to enforce certain speech codes against professors, against dissident professors, against anyone who questions or challenges what's morally fashionable.
So they actually employ little social justice warriors within departments to keep tabs on professors that are deemed controversial. They weren't controversial maybe 10 years ago, but now, because everything's gone nuts, are controversial. They threaten investigations, or do they investigate microaggressions? Is that something that they're looking into? You can't even define what that is, by the way.
So it's a small slight, usually against race or gender or some kind of perceived status, like ability status. One of the things, they don't have an office for investigating microaggressions, but among the things that I was brought up on charges, someone asked me if race was a social construct or a biological category, and I said, I don't know. I'm a philosopher, I'm not a biologist. And among other things, I was brought on charge of that. I've been accused of a microaggression when I asked for the evidence for microaggressions. I've been accused of microaggressions when I asked by colleagues and by students. When I asked for evidence of the policies that were engulfing, like trigger warnings, why should there be a trigger warning on a syllabus? What is the evidence that safe spaces are helpful to students? So those things themselves, even asking for evidence was a microaggression. So you've created a kind of a culture in which even asking questions about things is viewed as a violation. It's become a dogma factory.
That's astounding. Humility is now a chargeable offense. Saying, I don't know, that's not my area of expertise. They can bring you up on charges of microaggression. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, and it looks like it's destroying rational discourse in our universities, which is the point of universities, to explore, to ask questions, to understand opposing opinions. You can't do that anymore. You can't ask questions. You just have to go along with the dogma, and if you don't, you're in trouble.
Right, and having conversations is impossible. Having robust debates about certain topics is impossible. And so think about the injustice we're doing to our students when we're creating these large ecosystems that don't allow that. They don't allow questioning. They don't allow challenging. And so students are particularly brittle when they hear the other side of a debate. I believe very strongly, as John Stuart Mill did, that we have to be taught by people who actually believe things. I believe there should be a Marxist in an economics department. I believe that there should be a Friedmanite in an economics department. I believe that there should be intellectual diversity, and we give students the tools to figure out these issues and ask difficult questions, and we're not doing that.
All right, Peter. Just don't ask about the vaccine. That's way, way, way too dangerous.
Thank you, Jesse. I appreciate having me on.
All right.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.